Another trade deadline in the books, and the Vancouver Canucks do nothing. They do nothing. We're going to break down this year's trade deadline and discuss the lack of trades that the Canucks did. This is the line change. Welcome to the line change. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the trade deadline and the lack of moves by the Vancouver Canucks. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my notes all situated. So the Canucks end up doing nothing. I mean, they didn't completely do nothing, as yesterday they traded Carson Soucy to the New York Rangers for a third round pick. It will be a high third round draft pick, as it was a San Jose Sharks draft pick. So it's going to be, at the beginning of the third round. So that was essentially the only move that the Canucks made, which is very disappointing. People wanted to know if Brock Boeser would be traded. People were wondering if Pius Suter would be traded, and that Canucks would add a forward to try and help out this team get goals, because they're severely lacking in scoring goals right now. And I believe they are almost dead last, the lowest scoring team in the league. So they end up essentially standing pat and not doing anything. This deadline really makes you wonder if Francesco Aquilini meddled in this deadline, if he prevented Alvin and Rutherford from selling. A lot of people were saying the Canucks needed to sell at least their UFAs, and they didn't do it. So it's looking more and more like they're going to be using Suter and Boeser as their own rentals and then letting them walk in free agency. Yes, there's a very slim chance the Canucks could re-sign Boeser between now and July 1st. However, I'm thinking they're going to need to mend some fences before they even attempt to do that. And we'll get into that a little bit later, as we're going to talk about Patrik Allvin's post-deadline comments. But first, let's break down the trade deadline. We're going to go trade by trade. It's not going to be in any specific order. We're just going to break down the trades that happened today. So right here it says the Anaheim Ducks acquire defenseman Oliver Kylington from the New York Islanders for future considerations. The Edmonton Oilers acquired defenseman Jake Wallman from the San Jose Sharks for a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft, and forward Carl Berglund. The Washington Capitals acquired Anthony Beauvillier, former Vancouver Canuck, from Pittsburgh for a second-round pick. Beauvillier went for a second-round pick. The Ottawa Senators acquire forward Dylan Cozens, defenseman Dennis Gilbert, and a second-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft from the Buffalo Sabres for forward Josh Norris and defenseman Jacob Bernard Docker. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this trade in particular. I'll admit, I'm a little pissed off about this one, as I thought the Canucks should have gone after Josh Norris. I know we've talked about Norris in a previous video, and the fact that he's really good friends with Quinn Hughes, and that he's somebody that the Canucks should have targeted. I feel as though you could have gotten Norris for either Suter or Boeser, or maybe a prospect. So basically, Buffalo gets Josh Norris for Cozens and I don't want to say prospect, because I don't know much about this Dennis Gilbert, but all it took was a second round pick, another player, and Dylan Cozens. Obviously, Dylan Cozens is the major piece in this trade that is moving to Ottawa. I do think the Canucks should have, and again, I don't know if they actually even did attempt to talk to Ottawa about Norris, but they really should have aggressively gone after Josh Norris. And yeah, seeing this trade, and obviously the Canucks were also linked to Cozens as well at one point. But the fact that both of these guys are now off the table, deadline's passed, but I don't think, maybe the Sabres might sell Norris in the offseason. I don't know, but you would think, if they gave up a guy like Dylan Cozens to get Josh Norris, they're probably not looking to flip him in the offseason. So that trade definitely pisses me off a little bit. This next trade, the LA Kings acquire forward Andrei Kuzmenko, another former Canuck, and a 7th-round pick in the 2025 draft from the Philadelphia Flyers for a 3rd-round pick in the 2027 draft. So Kuzmenko moves again. This is now the 3rd team that he has been on this season. Obviously, he started the season off with the Flames, was traded to Philadelphia, and now he's been traded to LA. So he's been on the move quite a bit this season. This trade not this trade, but this player in particular, Kuzmenko, I have a little soft spot for Kuzmenko as I absolutely loved him when he was with the Canucks. I actually have one of his black skate jersey. I got that actually was probably days before he got traded. So, I'm a little sensitive with this. I still feel as though the Canucks gave up on Kuzmenko a little too soon. And I also feel as though they didn't treat him all that great. Obviously he clashed with Rick Tocchet and his system, but I also think they gave up on him way too soon. And yes, he hasn't put up the numbers that he did in his first season with the Canucks, but I still have a little, I still love Kuzmenko. I love his personality, and he's now a LA King. So hopefully he can get back to the player that he was that first season with the Canucks. But you also just can't help but feel bad for him. He's moved this many times in a calendar year. He hasn't really had a chance to settle. But moving forward, the Winnipeg Jets acquired defenseman Luke Schenn, yet another former Canuck, from the Pittsburgh Penguins for a 2nd-round pick in the 2026 NHL draft and a 4th-round pick in the 2027 NHL draft. Now, yesterday, Schenn was traded from the Predators to the Penguins, and then he's flipped again, this time on deadline day, and the Jets acquire him. Detroit Red Wings acquire goalie Peter Mrazek and forward Craig Smith from the Chicago Blackhawks for forward Joe Veleno. Now, obviously, the Blackhawks got Spencer Knight a few days ago, so they were going to be moving off Mrazek as they now have their goalie of the future in Spencer Knight. Columbus Blue Jackets acquire forward Luke Kunin from the San Jose Sharks for a 4th-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Winnipeg Jets acquire forward Brendan Tanev from the Seattle Kraken for a 2nd-round pick in the 2027 NHL draft. And here's a big one. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquire forward Scott Laughton, a 4th-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft and 6th-round pick in the 2026 draft from the Philadelphia Flyers for forward Nikita Grabenkin and a 1st-round pick in the 2027 NHL draft. So the Flyers got 2 first-round picks. Or no, scratch that. They got 1. Sorry, I thought there was 2. So the Maple Leafs acquire Scott Laughton. The New Jersey Devils acquire defenseman Dennis Chol from the New York Islanders for forward Adam Beckman. The Colorado Avalanche acquire forward Charlie Coyle and a 5th-round pick in the 2026 draft from the Boston Bruins for forwards Casey Mittelstadt and William Zellers and a 2nd-round pick in the 2025 draft. So the Boston Bruins swap out a center for another center. Colorado Avalanche acquire defenseman Eric Johnson from the Philadelphia Flyers for forward Giovanni Smith. The New York Rangers acquire forward Nicholas Aube-Kubel from the Buffalo Sabres for defenseman Eric Branston, a former Canuck. So Branston, who was traded to the Rangers in that JT Miller trade, is on the move once again and is now with the Buffalo Sabres. Chicago Blackhawks acquire forward Aku Ratu and defenseman Victor Soderstrom and Shea Weber from the Utah Hockey Club for a 5th-round pick in the 2026 NHL draft. And then here's the real big one. The Dallas Stars acquire forward Mikko Rantanen from the Carolina Hurricanes for forward Logan Stankoven, a conditional 1st-round pick in the 2026 NHL draft, a conditional 1st-round pick in the 2028 NHL draft, a 3rd-round pick in 2026, and a 3rd-round pick in the 2027 draft. So Mikko Rantanen is now a Dallas Star. And so that's the big trade here at the deadline, the big name that moves. It was made clear that Rantanen was not interested in re-signing with the Hurricanes, and that basically forced them to move him. Now, I kept close tabs on this trade in particular late last night, as it was said that the Stars would only do this trade if there was an extension involved in this trade. And Rantanen did sign an extension with the Dallas Stars. Let me actually quickly bring that up because I don't have that in front of me. And this is the big move of the deadline. And Carolina has a case of deja vu. Last year, they gained Jake Gensel and then lost him in free agency. And then this year, they gained Mikko Rantanen. And then instead of losing him in free agency, like they were going to, they decided to trade him at the deadline. And now they've lost Mikko Rantanen. So it really makes you wonder about the Hurricanes and whether or not they can keep star caliber players that they don't already have signed quickly. Yeah, so his next so the extension is 8 years, $12 million. So Mikko Rantanen signed an extension with the Dallas Stars, $12 million extension, good for 8 years. As we mentioned in a previous video about Rantanen, supposedly the Hurricanes offered him an 8-year deal around or just north of 100 million AAV, and he essentially turned it down to sign for less with the Dallas Stars. So I think Rantanen just did not want to be in Carolina. I do think he was still a little sour being traded by the Avalanche, and he just didn't really fit in Carolina, which is a little odd considering he's really good friends with Sebastian Aho, and they're both from Finland. They're fellow countrymen, and it just didn't work out in Carolina. So Dallas, and they're looking to make a big playoff push now that they have Rantanen. So they're definitely a team to look out for in the postseason. But going back to the trade deadline, New Jersey Devils acquire forwards Cody Glass and John Gruden from the Pittsburgh Penguins for forwards Chase Stillman and Max Graham and a third-round pick in the 2027 NHL Draft. Carolina Hurricanes acquire forward Mark Jankowski from the Nashville Predators for a fifth-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft. New Jersey Devils acquire forward Daniel Sprong, a brief Canuck, from the Seattle Kraken for a seventh-round pick. Now, obviously, Sprong was a Canuck at the start of the season and then was traded back to the Seattle Kraken. He had a short stint with the Canucks, so he's on the move again. Boston Bruins acquired defenseman Henry Jokiharju from the Buffalo Sabres for a fourth-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft. Ottawa Senators acquire forward Fabian Zetterlund and Tristan Robbins and a fourth-round pick in the 2025 NHL Draft from the San Jose Sharks for forwards Zach Ostapchuk and Noah Gregor and a second-round pick in 2025. Pittsburgh Penguins acquired defenseman Connor Timmins and forward Connor Dewar from the Toronto Maple Leafs for a fifth-round pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. New Jersey Devils acquire Mark McLaughlin from the Boston Bruins for forward Daniel Misul. The Florida Panthers acquire forward Brad Marchand from the Boston Bruins for a conditional second-round pick in the 2027 NHL. So it's the end of an era for the Boston Bruins, as their captain, noted agitator, noted villain, at least from a Vancouver Canucks perspective, Brad Marchand is now a Florida Panther. So this is huge. As I mentioned, end of an era for the Bruins. Marchand spent up until now his entire career with the Bruins. He was named the captain this season, and I imagine a lot of Boston Bruin fans are very upset about this. And the fact that they only got a conditional second-round pick for a player of the caliber of Brad Marchand. Now, you can say whatever you want about him being an agitator, a nuisance, prick, the type of person he is. You cannot question how good of a player he is. Yeah, he's a damn good player. And as much as I dislike him personally as a Canucks fan, he is one heck of a player. Granted, he is at the tail end of his career and he has won a Stanley Cup in the past, and now he has a chance to win another one with Florida, as Florida made some pretty big moves at this deadline. Say they were probably the most active team for this year's trade deadline. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquired defenseman Brandon Carlo from the Boston Bruins for forward Fraser Minton, a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft and a fourth-round pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. Toronto Maple Leafs acquire forward Reese Johnson from the Minnesota Wild for future considerations. And that is all the trades that happened, at least today. That was the final trade just prior to the deadline. So let's discuss the Vancouver Canucks' lack of moves in this deadline. Yesterday, Brock Besser is still a Vancouver Canuck, and so is Pius Suter. So is Derek Forbort. They did not sell their UFAs. They still have their UFAs. I'm just quickly looking up an article for Patrik Allvin and his post-deadline presser. Just look for, and yeah, so a lot of disappointed Vancouver Canuck fans at the lack of moves and the lack of, adding to this Vancouver Canucks team. They technically didn't add anybody. All they added was a third-round draft pick, who we don't know is going to be until the draft. So let's look over this article from Daily Faceoff talking about Patrik Allvin and his post-deadline presser. The headline reads, Canucks GM Patrik Allvin, and this is quoting him, "If I told you what I was offered for Brock Boeser, I think I would have to run out of here." So that is an exact quote that Patrik Allvin made when it comes to the offers they had in regards to Brock Boeser. And here's, the full quote. I'll quickly read it again. "If I told you what I was offered for Brock Boeser, I think I would have to run out of here because you would not believe me. I would imagine that Brock is extremely hungry to finish off strong here and then prove that he's a good player in this league and will continue to talk about a new contract." So reading that, I do feel as though Allvin disrespected Boeser by saying that. Basically, in a nutshell, essentially saying that Boeser has no value and that the offers they had for Boeser, they weren't interested in, they weren't good enough, and they feel as though he's not worth a first-round pick. They didn't get any offers, at least from the sound of this. They received offers that were not of interest to them, and that they felt as though the offers they were receiving weren't good enough for what they wanted. They were not getting what they wanted out of a potential Brock Boeser trade. The league did not see Boeser as someone who was valuable. So those comments really irked me. Like, for one, you don't say that in a presser. You don't make a comment like that, especially when there's still a slight chance you could re-sign Boeser. I believe there was a tweet out there by Cam Robinson who even said Boeser's agent and his camp is probably not happy about that comment. That comment probably pisses off Brock Boeser's camp and his agent. So it makes you wonder if Allvin might walk back that comment or come out with a statement to maybe clarify what he meant by that. But that leaves a bad taste in not just my mouth, but a lot of Canuck fans' mouths. And it's just a really stupid thing to say. So that whole presser was a abomination. And Patrik Allvin should be ashamed of himself that the presser went like that. Like, it's inexcusable for him to do that. And now it's looking, as I mentioned earlier in this video, it's looking more and more like Boeser's going to walk for free at free agency. So I think Patrik Allvin needs to get on the phone with Boeser's agent and repair what he just said, especially if he wants to talk about them continuing to talk about a new contract. Yes, the Canucks freed up some more cap space by trading Carson Soucy. They freed up about another $3 million. So now they're roughly around $13.5 million in cap space for this offseason. They could have freed up more space if they had traded. They also could have freed up space if they had traded Boeser as well. But they freed up about $3 million in cap space. They have roughly $13.5 million. You can allocate a lot of that towards Brock Boeser. I mean, Boeser has made it known that he wants about 7 years, $8 million. You can give $8 million of that to Brock Boeser. I mean, we don't know what the direction of this team or this management group is when it comes to the offseason because they didn't do shit at this deadline. They did not add. They subtracted a third-line defenseman for a draft pick, and that's all they did. They did not add to this forward group like they wanted to. They did not add a center. They didn't get that center that they've been wanting since they traded JT Miller away. It looks like they're going to have to wait to add in the offseason, and they may end up losing Boeser, Forbort, and maybe even Suter. I mean, apparently Forbort, they're looking to re-sign, but they're going to lose another center if they let Suter walk. They're going to lose a winger if they let Boeser walk. So that's 2 forwards on top of a second line center that they're looking for. So that's 3 forwards they're going to have to try and replace in the offseason with $13 million. Seems a little tight for me. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Are you, like me, pissed off that Patrik Allvin stood pat and did nothing? Are you pissed off at what Albin said in the presser in regards to Brock Besser. Do you feel that he disrespected him, especially after Brock Besser has given this organization 6 years and has been a homegrown talent and has made it known that he wants to stay, and you say this about him? Like, it just does not make any sense to me whatsoever. I will say I do have this thought that Aquilini, as I mentioned, may have meddled in this trade deadline. It wouldn't be the first time that he's done it. People remember way back when we were looking to trade Ryan Kessler at the deadline and Aquilini vetoed it. He said, no, it's not happening. So it's not like he hasn't meddled before. Makes you think if he did this time, and all because he wants revenue from 2 playoff games. He wants guaranteed revenue from 2 playoff games, from at least 2 guaranteed playoff games. That's if the Canucks make the playoffs. Right now, it's not a guarantee that the Canucks are going to make the playoffs. And the fact that they didn't add, basically the pressure is on the Canucks to make the playoffs. Now, if they do not make the playoffs and Brock Besser walks in free agency, if Pius Suter walks in free agency, this is going to be a fucking disaster for this group. Excuse my language, but I'm really pissed off that they didn't do anything. They didn't add to their forward group. They didn't try and make this team better. And they're coming up with excuses that they didn't like the offers they had. I'm sorry, I'm tired of the excuses from this management group. It's not the first time they've, disrespected a player, a employee. We talked about it in a previous video. Bruce Boudreau, they disrespected Elias Pettersson. They've also disrespected, I guess also in a way, JT Miller, Andrei Kuzmenko. So I really don't know what to say about this management group. Right now, we just look forward to tonight's game. I will still be going live tonight. I want to say 9:45, 10 o'clock-ish, as I get everything all set for that live post-game video. But yeah, that's going to do it for our discussion on this year's trade deadline. If you like this video, feel free to hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to The Line Change and want to keep up to date on everything for the rest of this season, we only have about 21 games left in the season. We're going to keep bringing you news, game recaps. So if you're into that, smash that subscribe button. You really help out the channel. Click on that notification bell so you're notified every single time we post a new video. For those of you watching and or listening on Spotify, feel free to drop a comment. Feel free to follow us on Spotify. Again, you really help us out on that platform. If you're looking to connect with us on social media, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at The Line Change. You can find us on Twitter, also known as X, at Line Change Van. You can find us on TikTok at the.line.change.po. And that's going to do it for us. And I'll see you guys in a few hours.